They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, I've been keeping mine in the freezer for 6 months now, and it's about ready to thaw. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Jake Morrison, and until recently, I thought I had a pretty decent life. 42 years old, owner of Morrison's handyman services, married to Lisa for 15 years, living in a modest 3-bedroom house in Millbrook, one of those small Midwest cities where everybody knows everybody else's business. Or so I thought. The night everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was in the garage, elbow deep in the engine of my beat-up Ford pickup, trying to figure out why it sounded like a dying walrus every time I started it. The neighbor's TV was blaring some reality show through their thin walls, and Lisa stumbled through the door connecting the garage to our kitchen. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice slightly slurred. She reeked of wine and something else, expensive perfume that definitely wasn't the drugstore stuff I bought her last Christmas. "Late night at the studio again?" I asked, not looking up from the engine. Lisa owned Serenity Pilates, a trendy little place downtown that catered to the wives of lawyers, doctors, and other folks with more money than sense. "Yeah, you know how it is. Networking drinks with the girls." She was texting someone, holding her phone close to her chest like she was guarding state secrets. I wiped my greasy hands on a rag and really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Her hair was mussed in that particular way that screamed, "I've been horizontal recently," and her lipstick was completely gone. Either she'd been eating a lot of chicken wings at this networking event, or she'd been doing something else entirely. "Must be some serious networking," I said. "This is the 3rd time this week." She shot me a look that could have frozen hell over. "Sorry my business success is such an inconvenience to you, Jake. Some of us are trying to move up in the world." And there it was. That tone. The one that made me feel about 2 inches tall, like I was some kind of failure for fixing toilets and replacing broken windows instead of wearing a suit to work every day. "I'm just saying..." "You're just saying nothing," she snapped, heading for the stairs. "I'm going to shower." I watched her go, noting how she clutched that phone like it was made of gold. Lisa had always been ambitious, always wanted more than our little house and my little business could provide. But lately she'd been different, distant, cold. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to things I'd been too busy or too stupid to notice before. The gym receipts for a place she didn't go to, the new underwear that never seemed to make it into our bedroom, the way she'd developed a sudden interest in girls' nights out, and business conferences that required overnight stays. The real kicker came when I was fixing Mrs. Kowalski's kitchen faucet 3 blocks over. Mrs. K was about 70, Polish as pierogi, and had her finger on the pulse of every piece of gossip in a 5-mile radius. "You're Lisa. She's doing very well for herself," Mrs. K said, handing me a cup of coffee that could have stripped paint. "I see her car at the Riverside Motel quite often. Must be meeting with very important clients there." The Riverside Motel, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions. My stomach dropped faster than a lead balloon. "Yeah," I managed. "Important clients." That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Lisa's phone while she was in the shower. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. A whole separate messaging app I'd never seen before, hidden in a folder labeled work stuff. The messages made my blood run cold and my face burn with humiliation at the same time. "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Jake's working late. We have all evening. The way you make me feel, I've never experienced anything like this. He's so clueless. Sometimes I think he wouldn't notice if I brought you home for dinner." And then there were the photos. My wife, my Lisa, in positions and situations that made it crystal clear she'd been getting a lot more than business advice from someone named Dom. I sat there in our bedroom, listening to the shower run, staring at images of my wife with another man, and something inside me just broke. Not broke like crying or screaming, broke like when a machine stops working the way it's supposed to and starts doing something entirely different. The next evening, I followed her. She told me she was going to a client consultation, kissed me on the cheek like Judas, and drove off in her little Honda. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then followed in the truck. Sure enough, she pulled into the Riverside Motel. Room 237. A few minutes later, a red Camaro with racing stripes pulled up next to her car. Out stepped a guy who looked like he'd walked off the cover of a fitness magazine, all muscles and attitude, with the kind of tan that comes from spending more time in front of a mirror than most people spend at their jobs. I watched through my binoculars as they embraced in the parking lot, watched him grab her ass like he owned it, watched her laugh and run her fingers through his perfectly styled hair. "Dom," I muttered. Of course your name is Dom. Couldn't have been a Steve or a Bob. I sat there for 2 hours, watching the light in room 237, imagining what was happening behind those thin walls. When they finally came out, Lisa's hair was a mess, and Dom was strutting like a rooster who'd just conquered the henhouse. After they drove away, I walked over to the Camaro's parking spot. Dom had left his windows down, probably thought he was too tough for anyone to mess with his precious car. On the passenger seat was a gym bag with Dominic Torres embroidered on the side, and a business card for Torres Auto Restoration sticking out of the cup holder. I memorized the address, took a photo of the license plate, and headed home. Lisa was already there when I got back, showered and in her pajamas, watching TV like nothing had happened. "How was your evening?" she asked without looking away from the screen. "Oh, I said. Same old, same old. How was your client consultation?" "Productive," she said. "Very productive." I went to bed that night knowing my marriage was over, but I also went to bed with a plan forming in my head, a plan that would make sure Lisa and her muscle-bound boyfriend got exactly what they deserved. The funny thing about betrayal is how it changes your perspective on everything. Suddenly, every conversation becomes suspicious. Every smile feels fake. Every "I love you" sounds like a lie. I started paying attention to details I'd ignored for months, like how Lisa's best friend Cheryl had been acting weird around me lately. Nervous, jumpy, like she knew something she shouldn't. Cheryl was the queen bee of Millbrook's social scene, married to a successful real estate developer, always throwing parties and organizing charity events. She and Lisa had been friends since college, thick as thieves. "Jake!" Cheryl called out when she saw me at the grocery store a few days after my discovery. "How are you doing? You look tired." "Just working hard," I said. "You know how it is." She fidgeted with her cart handle, avoiding eye contact. "Lisa mentioned you've been putting in a lot of hours lately. That's good. Keeping busy." "Yeah, well, somebody's got to pay the bills." I watched her face carefully. Speaking of Lisa, she's been pretty busy herself. All those networking events and client meetings. Cheryl's face went pale. "Oh, yes, the business world is so demanding these days. So many opportunities." "I bet," I said. "Especially at the Riverside Motel. Must be where all the important business happens." If Cheryl had been pale before, now she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't," I said, pushing my cart past her. "Give my best to Richard." That weekend, I decided to visit Torres Auto Restoration. It was in the industrial part of town, a big garage with several classic cars in various stages of repair. Through the open bay doors, I could see Dom working on a vintage Mustang, his shirt off, showing off for a couple of admiring female customers. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Dom was exactly what I'd expected, all swagger and machismo, the kind of guy who probably called women baby, and thought revving his engine was the height of sophistication. He had that cocky smile of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Around noon, he took a break and walked to his Camaro. I waited until he was inside the garage, then casually strolled over to his car. The windows were down again. Apparently Dom wasn't big on learning from experience. I pulled out my pocket knife and carefully inserted it into the valve stem of his front right tire. Not enough to cause an immediate blowout, just enough to ensure a slow leak that would leave him stranded at the most inconvenient possible moment. As I walked back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. It was a small thing, petty even, but it was a start. That evening, Lisa came home in an unusually good mood. She was humming some song I didn't recognize and actually kissed me hello. "Good day?" I asked. "Very good," she said. "I think I'm really starting to build something special with the studio. New opportunities opening up all the time." I'm sure Dom would agree. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Lisa froze, her back to me as she hung up her jacket. "What did you say?" I said I'm sure you'd agree about the opportunities. She turned around slowly, studying my face. "That's not what you said." "Isn't it?" I shrugged. "Must be the TV. Sometimes I don't hear myself clearly over all that noise." We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how much I knew. Finally, she forced a smile. "You've been acting strange lately, Jake. Maybe you should see someone about that stress." "Maybe I should," I agreed. "Or maybe I should just start paying more attention to what's going on around me." The next few days were a masterclass in passive aggression. Lisa watched me like a hawk, trying to figure out if I was suspicious or just being my usual oblivious self. I played the part of the clueless husband perfectly, asking innocent questions about her schedule, mentioning how I'd run into Cheryl at the store, wondering aloud about the increase in her business expenses. Meanwhile, I was doing my homework. I learned that Dom had been bragging around town about his flexible girlfriend who was way too good for her husband. I found out from Mrs. Kowalski that Lisa's car had been spotted at the motel at least twice a week for the past 3 months. I discovered that Cheryl had been covering for Lisa, providing alibis and excuses whenever anyone asked questions. But the real breakthrough came when I was having a beer at Murphy's Tavern, the local dive bar where I'd been drinking since I turned 21. Murphy's was the kind of place where working guys went to forget their troubles, and the bartender, Sean Murphy himself, had been listening to sob stories for 30 years. "You look like hell, Morrison," Sean said, sliding me a beer without being asked. "Feel like it too," I admitted. "Woman troubles?" I must have looked surprised, because Sean laughed. "Kid, I've been pouring drinks in this town since before you were born. I can spot a man with woman troubles from across the room." "That obvious?" "Only to someone who's seen it 1,000 times before." Sean leaned against the bar. "Want to talk about it?" So I told him. Not everything. I wasn't ready to admit the full extent of my humiliation, but enough. Sean listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or refilling my glass. "You know what your problem is?" Sean said when I finished. "You're playing defense when you should be playing offense." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself instead of doing something about it. Your wife's making a fool of you, and you're letting her." "What am I supposed to do? Challenge the guy to a duel?" Sean laughed. "Nothing that dramatic. But there are other ways to handle a situation like this. Ways that don't involve lawyers or violence, but still get the point across." "Such as?" "Such as making sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of woman your wife really is, and what kind of man her boyfriend is." I stared into my beer, thinking about Sean's words. He was right. I'd been acting like a victim when I should have been taking control of the situation. "The thing is," Sean continued, "guys like this Dom character, they're all about image. Take away their reputation, and they've got nothing left." "And how exactly would I do that?" Sean's grin was positively evil. "Kid, you'd be amazed what people will believe if you present the information the right way." I finished my beer and headed home, Sean's words echoing in my head. When I got there, Lisa was on the phone in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," she was saying. "He's too wrapped up in his little business to notice what's happening right under his nose." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "I know it's risky, but it's not like this is going to last forever. Once I figure out my next move, I'll be done with all this suburban housewife nonsense." Another pause. "Of course I'll be careful. Jake's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. He still thinks I'm at book club every Thursday night." Book club. On Thursdays, Lisa claimed to attend a book club at Cheryl's house. Apparently the only thing they were reading was the Kama Sutra. I backed away from the kitchen and went upstairs, my mind racing. Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave. All this time, I'd thought she was having a midlife crisis or going through some kind of phase. But she was actually planning her exit strategy, and I was just collateral damage. Well, if Lisa wanted to play games, I was ready to show her what a real player looked like. The first rule of warfare, according to Sun Tzu, is to know your enemy. So I spent the next week studying my opponents like I was preparing for the biggest job of my life. Lisa's routine was predictable. Pilates studio until 3, errands until 5, which usually meant meeting Dom, home for dinner, and an evening of pretending to be a loving wife. Thursdays were book club at Cheryl's, which I now knew was code for extended sessions at the Riverside Motel. Dom's schedule was even easier to figure out. He worked at his garage until 6, hit the gym for 2 hours, then spent his evenings either with Lisa or at Rookie's sports bar, holding court with his buddies and anyone else who'd listened to his stories about his sexual conquests. Cheryl was the wild card. As Lisa's best friend and apparent accomplice, she was the one orchestrating the cover-ups and alibis. But Cheryl had her own vulnerabilities, namely her obsession with maintaining her reputation as Millbrook's social queen. I decided to start with Dom. On Thursday evening, instead of staying home like the oblivious husband I was supposed to be, I drove to Rookie's. The place was packed with the usual crowd of wannabe tough guys and women who thought dating a man with muscles was the same as dating a man with character. Dom was at his usual spot at the end of the bar, surrounded by his admirers, telling some story that involved a lot of gesturing and even more exaggeration. I ordered a beer and found a table where I could watch and listen. "So this married chick I'm seeing," Dom was saying, his voice carrying across the bar. "She's got her husband so whipped, he doesn't even notice when she comes home smelling like another man." The crowd laughed appreciatively. I gripped my beer bottle a little tighter. "What's she look like?" asked one of his buddies, a skinny guy with more tattoos than brain cells. Hot as hell, Dom replied. Blonde, great body, owns her own business. Way too good for the loser she married. How long you been hitting that? Few months now. And let me tell you, she can't get enough. Keeps telling me how much better I am than her husband. More laughter. I finished my beer and headed for the door, but not before stopping at Dom's table. Excuse me, I said, tapping him on the shoulder. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. You're talking about a married woman, right? Dom looked annoyed at the interruption. Yeah, what's it to you? Nothing, really. I just hope you're being careful. You never know when a husband might find out about these things. Trust me, pal, Dom said with a cocky grin. This guy's completely clueless. Even if someone told him what was happening, he'd probably thank me for keeping his wife happy. You might be surprised, I said. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. I left before Dom could respond, but I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away. Let him wonder. The next morning, I put phase 2 of my plan into action. I drove to the Millbrook Community Center, where Cheryl was hosting her monthly charity luncheon. The parking lot was full of expensive cars belonging to the wives of doctors, lawyers, and business owners. Exactly the kind of women who thrived on gossip and social drama. I waited until the event was in full swing, then walked into the community center like I belonged there. The main room was decorated with flowers and balloons, and about 50 well-dressed women were eating salad and pretending to care about whatever cause Cheryl was promoting this month. Jake, Cheryl spotted me immediately, her face going pale. What are you doing here? I was hoping to catch you for a minute, I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. I wanted to thank you for covering for Lisa during her book club meetings. What do you mean? You know, providing an alibi when she's actually at the Riverside Motel with her boyfriend. That's what friends are for, right? The conversations at the surrounding tables stopped dead. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward us, and I could practically see the gossip wheel starting to turn. Jake, I think you're confused. Am I? I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken of Lisa's car in the motel parking lot. Because I'm pretty sure this is Lisa's Honda, and I'm pretty sure that's Dom Torres's Camaro right next to it. Cheryl's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Around us, women were whispering to each other, some already reaching for their phones. Anyway, I continued cheerfully, I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate your friendship. It takes a special kind of person to help a married woman cheat on her husband. I turned and walked out, leaving Cheryl standing there in front of 50 of Millbrook's biggest gossips, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing with text messages. Word was already spreading through Millbrook's social network like wildfire. Mrs. Kowalski had called twice, probably wanting to be the first to get the full story. Even my brother Mike had texted, "Heard some crazy stuff about Lisa. You okay?" Lisa came home early that afternoon, her face flushed with anger. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded. "I don't know what you mean," I said innocently. Cheryl called me in tears. She said you embarrassed her in front of half the women in town. Did I? I was just thanking her for being such a good friend. You accused me of having an affair. Did I? I pretended to think about it. I don't remember using those words. I just mentioned that you've been spending time at the Riverside Motel instead of book club. If people jump to conclusions, that's not really my fault. Lisa stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You know, I know lots of things, Lisa. I know you've been lying to me for months. I know you've been meeting Dom Torres at that motel twice a week. I know Cheryl's been covering for you, and I know you've been telling people what a pathetic husband you have. For a moment, I thought she might try to deny it. Instead, she sat down heavily on the couch and put her head in her hands. How long have you known? Long enough. What do you want? Money? The house? I almost laughed. Even now, she thought this was about material things. I don't want your money, Lisa. I want you to understand what it feels like to be humiliated, to have people talking about you behind your back, to know that everyone in town thinks you're a joke. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real fear in her eyes. Jake, please. We can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this. You're right, I said. It didn't have to be like this. But you made your choice, and now you get to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Dom. We need to talk. I showed Lisa the message. Looks like your boyfriend wants to have a conversation. Should be interesting. That evening, Dom showed up at my house. I watched him through the window as he got out of his Camaro and walked up to my front door. He was trying to look tough, but I could see the uncertainty in his posture. I opened the door before he could knock. Dom, I said pleasantly, I was wondering when you'd show up. We need to talk, he said, trying to sound intimidating. Sure, come on in. He followed me into the living room, looking around like he was casing the place. Lisa was nowhere to be seen. She'd locked herself in the bedroom an hour ago. Look, man, Dom said, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Really? What kind of misunderstanding? About me and your wife. It's not what you think. I sat down in my recliner and gestured for him to take the couch. What do I think? I don't know, but whatever you heard, it's probably not true. So you're not sleeping with Lisa? Dom shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated. Is it? Because from where I sit, it seems pretty simple. You're screwing my wife, and you're both too stupid to be discreet about it. Look, I'm sorry, okay? But your marriage was already over. Lisa told me you guys were getting divorced. Did she now? That's interesting, because she never mentioned that to me. Dom's confident facade was cracking. Maybe you should talk to her about that. Oh, I plan to. But right now, I'm talking to you. I leaned forward. Here's the thing, Dom. I know all about your little affair. I know about the motel, the lies, the bragging you've been doing at Rookies. And now everyone else in town knows too. What do you mean? I mean, your reputation as the town stud is about to take a serious hit. See, people around here don't like men who break up marriages. They especially don't like men who brag about it in bars. Dom stood up abruptly. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm just letting you know that actions have consequences. You wanted to play games with other people's lives, so now you get to see what happens when those people play back? You're crazy. Maybe, but I'm not the one who's about to lose everything. Dom headed for the door, then turned back. This isn't over. You're right, I said. It's just getting started. The next few days were like watching dominoes fall. The story of Lisa's affair spread through Millbrook faster than a virus, and everyone wanted to be the first to share the latest details. Mrs. Kowalski called me every morning with updates. The women at the grocery store are saying Cheryl knew all along, she reported. And someone saw Dom's car getting towed from the motel parking lot yesterday. Engine problems, they say. I smiled at that last part. Dom's engine problems were courtesy of a little sugar in his gas tank. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but sufficient to leave him stranded and embarrassed. Lisa had stopped going to the studio altogether. According to the Gossip Network, several of her clients had canceled their memberships, citing moral concerns and inappropriate behavior. The Millbrook social scene was small and judgmental, and adultery was still considered scandalous, especially when it involved someone as prominent as Lisa. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. On Saturday morning, I drove to Torres Auto Restoration. The garage was busy, but I noticed Dom was working alone in the back bay, away from his employees and customers. Perfect. I parked across the street and waited. Around noon, Dom took a break and walked to the convenience store next door. I gave him a few minutes, then strolled into the garage. Help you? Asked one of the mechanics. I'm looking for Dom, I said. I've got a classic Mustang that needs some work. He's on break. Should be back in a few minutes. Mind if I wait? I'd love to look around. The mechanic shrugged and went back to work. I wandered through the garage, admiring the cars and equipment. In Dom's work area, I found what I was looking for, his toolbox, with his name prominently displayed on the side. I pulled out a small device I'd bought online, a Bluetooth speaker about the size of a matchbox. I quickly attached it to the underside of Dom's toolbox with a magnetic mount, then activated it with my phone. Can I help you? I turned around to find Dom standing behind me, looking suspicious. Just admiring your setup, I said. Nice place you've got here. Thanks. You said something about a Mustang? Actually, I changed my mind. I think I'll take my business elsewhere. Dom's eyes narrowed. You're Lisa's husband. Guilty as charged. What do you want? Nothing from you. I just wanted to see the place where my wife's boyfriend works. Get a sense of the kind of man she's been spending time with. Look, about Lisa. Save it, I said. I'm not here to fight or make threats. I just wanted to satisfy my curiosity. I started to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Dom, you might want to be more careful about what you say in public. You never know who might be listening. That afternoon, I put my little Bluetooth speaker to work. I'd recorded several conversations from Dom's bragging sessions at Rookies, including his detailed descriptions of his affair with Lisa and his insulting comments about me. Now I could play those recordings remotely through the hidden speaker. I waited until the garage was full of customers and employees, then activated the speaker. Dom's voice suddenly filled the garage, loud and clear. This married chick I'm seeing, she's got her husband so whipped he doesn't even notice when she comes home smelling like another man. The garage went silent. Everyone turned to look at Dom, who was standing next to his toolbox with a look of complete confusion. "What the hell?" Dom said, looking around frantically. But the recording continued. "Way too good for the loser she married. Keeps telling me how much better I am than her husband." Dom started tearing his work area apart, looking for the source of the sound. His employees and customers watched in fascination as his own voice continued to broadcast his private conversations. Even if someone told him what was happening, he'd probably thank me for keeping his wife happy. By the time Dom found the speaker and ripped it off his toolbox, half the garage was laughing and the other half was shaking their heads in disgust. I watched from across the street as Dom tried to explain to his customers that it was some kind of prank, but the damage was done. Word of Dom's public humiliation spread quickly. By evening, the story had grown and evolved, as gossip stories do. Some people said Dom had been caught bragging about sleeping with multiple married women. Others claimed he'd been secretly recording his sexual encounters. The truth didn't matter. Dom's reputation was in ruins. But I still wasn't finished. The next phase of my plan required inside information, and I knew exactly where to get it. Cheryl's husband Richard was a successful real estate developer, but he was also a regular at Murphy's Tavern. More importantly, he was clearly unhappy about his wife's involvement in Lisa's affair. I found him at the bar on Tuesday evening, nursing a whiskey and looking like a man with serious problems. "Richard," I said, taking the stool next to him, "mind if I join you?" He looked up with bloodshot eyes. "Jake, I was wondering when I'd see you." "Rough week?" "You could say that." Richard signaled Sean for another drink. "My wife's been getting death threats from half the women in town. Apparently helping someone cheat on their husband is worse than the cheating itself." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Because from what I hear, you're the one who started this whole mess." I sipped my beer. "I just told the truth, Richard. What people did with it was on them." He laughed, hard and ugly. "The truth? Your wife and mine planned this. It wasn't an affair. It was an exit strategy." My stomach dropped. He explained. "Lisa had been using Dom to make me jealous. Cheryl coached her how to play the victim so Lisa could file for divorce and take half of everything. Motel trysts, public scenes, Dom's bragging, all staged to hit me when they were ready. When he left, I sat at the bar, cold and furious. If Lisa wanted a long game, I'd show her a real strategist. Millbrook's summer festival drew the whole town. The perfect stage. I'd learned Cheryl kept records, texts, emails, even audio of planning sessions. With handyman access to half the town, getting into Cheryl's house was easy. I found a folder labeled Lisa's Situation and copied everything, especially recordings where Cheryl detailed the plan to frame me as abusive and use Dom's boasting to time the exposure. Saturday, bright and crowded, Cheryl took the stage to preach honesty. Sean, who ran the beer tent, grinned when I told him what I needed. Midway through her speech, Cheryl's own voice poured over the PA. "The key is to make Jake look like the bad guy. We chose Dom because he brags. By the time we're done, everyone will think Jake's an abusive monster." The crowd froze. Phones rose. Cheryl's face went white. Sean had locked the soundboard. The recording kept playing. Emails, tactics, even plans to falsify medical records. People who'd sympathized with Lisa now looked betrayed. I took the mic. "I'm Jake Morrison. For 2 weeks you've judged my marriage without the full story." I held up the flash drive. "This is the real truth. Lisa didn't cheat out of pain. She plotted to destroy me and take everything. Cheryl engineered it. Dom was their pawn." Lisa sobbed in the back. Dom tried to disappear. Cheryl fled the stage and sat in her car, stunned. "I didn't start this fight," I said. "But when someone declares war on me, I finish it." I dropped the mic and walked off as the crowd buzzed. By morning, everyone in Millbrook would know exactly who'd been playing who. I slid into my truck smiling for the first time in months. The war was over. I'd won. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story, or write in the comments from which city you are watching.